Right, in this session, we're going to take a look at some EQ and compression on the drums. Real basic sort of stuff to set you off. And then, of course, you can take this in any sort of direction you want, depending on the context of the mix or whatever. So let's look at some basic EQ approaches to the kick drums, snare drums, the tom drums, and the overhead, and also the room mic, which I'm going to mute for now. We'll come back to this guy in a second, okay? Just looking at everything that's kind of like medium to close capture on the kit. Now, there's a pretty nice technique that we like to follow when it comes to EQing the drums, which is the sort of like the smiley face technique, right? Now, where drums are pretty much, they're like one pitch percussion instruments, rather than like a guitar or a piano where there's lots of different notes that can be played and tuned to. The drums, once they have been tuned to a certain pitch, that's all the drum's going to give off, okay? It's going to, of course, have like, extra harmonic content, overtones, all that sort of stuff going on. It's not a pure tone like a sine wave, but it's going to have a fundamental pitch, and that's the first thing we're really going to look for to preserve and sort of carve out, because if we start to take that away, that fundamental pitch, it can be quite damaging to like the tone and the shape of the kick drum or the snare drum, and it loses a lot of weight to it. So let's take a look here at this kick drum, and on our we've got the inside kick drum here up against the beater, and we need to take a look at on the visualizer where that kick drum's coming through strong. So you can see what's that about, between 50 to 80 hertz, maybe 60 hertz strong. You can see all the additional harmonic content that's being produced by this. So I'm just gonna, one thing you guys want to be careful about as well is having too much low end building up on your mix. Even if you can't hear it, it's gonna be there, okay? There's gonna be some rumbling frequencies away in the low end, which is really going to mash up your mix a little bit. So be wary about that. So don't worry about overcutting the low end. You can always pull it back if you feel like you're missing a little bottom end weight in your mixes. But remember that lower frequencies, lower notes have much more energy than anything else up here. So they're going to be quite loud. Okay, much louder than anything else. So just be wary about them building up track after track. Even if you can't hear them, there's going to be a lot of low energy there, okay? So I'm just gonna, I'm gonna protect this fundamental here, and I'll show you what happens when we start to take it away. Gonna lose a lot of weight on that kick drum. So without that, with this fundamental I can see it's the fundamental, it's the strongest, frequency response that I'm seeing on the visualizer. It just sounds very thin, right? It's lost a whole lot of its kick element. And we'll see the same sort of thing on the snare drums or whatever. So let's protect that fundamental, possibly even boost it a little bit. Not too heavy. We can always use serial EQ if we want, which is just an EQ after another one to give it a bit more in that area. But not to overboost it, because remember, it's a dynamic processor, which means we're going to start introducing volume to the mix, which we can rely more so on our compressors to in a bit. The next thing we want to do in this smiley face technique is take away what we call the muddiness, the boxiness area, which is generally mids, the upper low mids around here, 300 hertz to maybe 1K, that sort of thing here. This will dampen a lot of the classic boxiness, and you'll hear it when I bypass it and put it back in, maybe even boost it a little bit. It's just going to give a lot of really untamed frequencies that are really disturbing the color of that fundamental, and we want to take the space away for guitars and other instruments later on down the line as well. We just really want that fundamental frequency and a bit of flavor. So we're going to take away this mid-range here. So let's hear it with this gone and back in. Just a little bit more flabby, a bit more boxy sounding, and it doesn't give our kick drum as much clarity as it does without it. So we start by taking away our mid-range here. Okay, you can be quite generous with the Q, with the bandwidth here, or not. One thing that beginners you really want to try and avoid is the whole sweeping technique, where you search along, you boost something and you search along for frequencies that are quite garish that you don't like in your mix, and we take them away. The thing is, if you boost those frequencies, you do that whole search and destroy thing, you're going to be introducing a lot of frequencies, which is going to make it sound like garbage. It's going to really come up there. It's not going to be good. So when you really start to take things away, if you hear that things aren't right, do a little bit of searching, but just be wary that if you start to search and take things away, you're going to be finding a lot that you don't like, and your whole EQ is just going to have a lot of dips, all like this, where you've gone like, okay, everything I've been searching, it all sounds bad, and it's all going to sound bad up there. if we boost it. I think I've just undone some stuff, so I'm just going to take it back here. I think I put some of the noise gate down as well, didn't I? There we go, just a lot more clarity down there. And what you can choose to add as well, to finish off this smiley face thing we've got going on, is just to add something in the upper mid-range for a bit more attack and click. This could be quite a good technique on snare drums that want a bit more pop at the top end, or kick drums where you've only recorded with one kick drum microphone, say, and you just want a bit more attack in there. Which is quite nice, actually. I quite like this. You can be quite generous with the boost as well. Yeah, great. Same kind of rule follows for the other kick drum and the snare drums too. Okay, so let's start to piece these together here as well. Let's hear this secondary kick drum on the resonant head. Let's keep our EQ open as well on the kick in. Just so we can monitor that. We don't want to start, you know, if you've got like, for example, on a bass guitar amp, if you've got a bass guitar microphone and DI and you boost all the low end in the same place, it's not going to make the whole thing sound bigger and fatter at all. One will start to disguise the other. You'll get a couple of problems there. So make sure that each one is doing its own thing, okay, that it's serving a purpose, not that you've just like duplicated things or whatever else and, you know, just chucking up the low end on each and every track. It's not going to make it sound bigger at all. On this one here, I'm going to take away a bit of the top end and just have this as more of like a sub kick kind of thing going on, right? Just going to give it a bit more bottom end than I do on my kick in. Because you can see it's got a bit more sort of sub response over here. And give it just a bit of a high cut. Compared to my kick in, which I've got the top boost on as well. There you go. So that's two kick drums complementing each other really nicely. So without the sub, with, and without the top. Yeah, really nice sort of sound. Let's try the same sort of thing with the snare drum here, okay? Let's start with snare top. And again, my snare underneath, that's going to have a lot more snap because of the snare wire on there. So I could probably save this guy for a little bit of a snap at the top here and not put so much into the snare top, you know, the snare bottom here. Yeah, a lot more crack, more definition if I take away this mid-range. And a bit more sizzle on the top end, okay? So here's these two complementing each other. Yeah, a bit more snap from the bottom in there. Again, this is a real simple start here, okay? I may extend the noise gate parameters later on to help them breathe a little bit better. The compression's going to come in and do a great job of lifting up the volume and shaping its dynamic response here. So here's our kick drum and snare drums together. We'll play it with the overheads as well, but while we're here, something pretty typical to do with our overheads is just to high pass them, you know, bring them way up. We've already got a lot of like mid-range and lower mid-range and lows in there from the kick drum and snare drum, possibly the toms too. So you don't really want to crowd it too much with anything sort of below like this this mid-range sort of here. But if you feel like your drums are missing a little bit of weight, roll this back a little bit and see if we can introduce a little bit more. Okay, so let's just hear our overheads without this high pass. So I'll bring in my kick drum and snare drum, and then I'm going to be quite aggressive here up to 1K as a high pass. But I'm going to bring it back just until I've got a little bit more body in there, okay, to support the kick drum and snare drum too, but not to trespass too much on it. Yeah, just a bit of a high shelf to bring those cymbals out a bit more, and just duck away a little bit of this mid-range there. That, as you heard when I boosted it, brought out a lot more of the spill, and it was really crowding the snare drum and kick drum a little bit. Very nice, cool. Okay, so yeah, let's hear those noise gates on the kick drums and snare drums and the EQ, with and without, in context with the overheads too. Yeah, much tighter, more definition on the kick drum and the snare drum, and less bleed thanks to our noise gate. Same sort of rules for the tom drums. Okay, let's go in and find them one at a time here. Let's take a look at our EQ visualizer. So yeah, just under 100 hertz here. Okay, so let's get rid of anything below that. Let's tighten this guy up. Let's get rid of this mid-range here. Let's hear the difference. Yeah, you can already hear that definition, right? Yeah, just too many overtones happening there. It's just sort of really disguising the true sound of our tom drum. It's not as defined as it should be or could be. Let's put that back in. Yeah, and if we want a little bit more attack at the top end, yeah, you can search for something to come in there. That's pretty nice. Let's start with that. Let's find a floor tom drum. One just before it here. Shame there's not like a big extended fill we can play with, but never mind, this is okay. Okay, visualizer. Got about 120 hertz there. Let's cut this guy away. Yeah, much more definition there. Yeah, there's something nice around here in the upper mid-range just to help it pop through the mix a little bit. Great, cool. So there's some EQ on our drums, okay? That's just our EQ session. I'll stop that there, and then we'll take a look at compression on the same session just after that.